What's up YouTube, and welcome to the Anabolic Outpost. In this edition, I will be showing off a recipe tutorial for my standard anabolic ice cream. This recipe is inspired by Greg Doucette's original anabolic ice cream, which really popularized the idea of anabolic ice cream in the fitness community. Now I'll admit I don't make this recipe too much anymore because I think there's way other flavorful anabolic ice creams out there, but this is what first got me into the concept, and if you've never had it before, I highly recommend you try this as your first recipe that you make. I figured this would be a great first anabolic ice cream video to start out on my channel, and if you do want to see those more flavorful ice cream recipes, be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you won't miss it when they come out. Now that that's out of the way, let's get right into it. The first thing that you're going to need is protein powder. Now you could really use any protein powder you want, obviously, because it's what your flavor wants, but we're going basic here. I'm just going to go with the standard vanilla from PE Science Protein. Just know if you use something else from a different brand, it might just come out with a slightly different texture, but that's not a bad thing. The next thing we got is xanthan gum. This is what makes it expand and really gives it that volume that you have to ice cream. Next thing is fat-free Greek yogurt. Your favorite artificial sweetener, as always I'm going with sucralose. Fat-free milk or almond milk if you choose. Vanilla extract or cocoa powder if you're doing a chocolate ice cream. Salt, and lastly, the ingredient that puts ice in ice cream, ice. To start, you're going to be mixing this all in a food processor, so you could just go ahead and place that on your scale right away. Now, I can't necessarily explain the science to this, and there probably is really no science at all, but I've found that mixing the protein powder, the milk, and the xanthan gum together first is the best way to start it out and mix. It really gets the xanthan gum blended in. I've found that if you added it last, kind of makes it a little hard for it to fully process into the recipe, but if you add it first, the xanthan gum is already spread throughout, so when you add the other ingredients in, it will be evenly distributed already in your ice cream. But like I said, I'm probably just pulling that out of my ass, so you could just add it all in the blender at the same time. It doesn't really matter. I forgot to mention that I just added 40 grams of the protein powder in there, so that's what you're going to need for the recipe. Next thing that's going in is the milk. You're going to need 150 grams of milk. Next, I got my xanthan gum going in. For my recipe, I've found that 3 grams is my personal favorite, but with this stuff, you really got to play around with it, especially if it's your first time. You probably won't want to play around with it right away. I can confirm that this stuff does make you feel kind of bloated, and it does give you the full feeling that you want in something that's low calorie, but if you add too much of it, you're going to feel way too bloated, and for you, that's all really a personal preference. As I said earlier, I'm going to blend these 3 ingredients up now. If you don't want to believe my fake scientific theory, you could just add them all in at once. Does not really matter. I am now adding in the Greek yogurt. I'm going to add 130 grams of that. Now for the sweetener, I like to add 2 grams of this stuff myself. Just like the xanthan gum, you can play around with it. It really depends on how sweet you like it. Five grams of vanilla is the calling, or 3 grams of cocoa powder. It depends what flavor you're wanting to go for. Use your best judgment on which one to add, or just be dangerous and add them both. And finally, I'm transporting the ice straight from my freezer into the blender. I'm adding in the ice. Now you'll see in the video that I'm only adding 125 grams of ice, and a lot of people in the anabolic cooking community, especially Mr. Doucette himself, would probably shame on me for this. But I am currently on a bulk, and I still want to be hungry later to have some more food, so I'm only adding 125 grams. I would recommend for the original recipe to add in 200 to 250 grams of ice, but you could play around and you could use your best judgment to see how much ice you want to add based on how much volume. Less ice means that more flavor, and more ice means more volume. Lastly there, I just added a pinch of salt just to enhance the flavor a little bit. And now I'm going to get to work and blend this up. If you're wondering, it's going to take roughly 3 minutes to get the consistency here that you want, but I'm going to show you right now that you should have a pretty smooth consistency when you look in there. You should be able to go through with your rubber spatula and see that there are no other ice chunks or any chunks floating in there. And finally, the Dr. Doucette test. Flip it over, shake it a little. Now, you usually flip it over your head, but I was too lazy to go ahead and do that. But you just shake it, and I'm being pretty dangerous here, but you could just see how thick this is. If it falls out the blender, you made it wrong, but if you made it right, it should be thick and not even budge. Now for the last step, and definitely the most unfortunate step. I never heard him talk about this in this video, and although the texture is great for this ice cream, I personally think that it comes out a little too warm. It comes out like a little bit of a fridge temperature, and you really want that ice cream icy consistency that you think of on a hot summer day to cool you down. But this doesn't just do it for me. I like to let mine sit in the freezer for an hour. If you're impatient and can't wait, it's still going to taste great. Just know that the temperature isn't going to be completely consistent. Once it sits in the freezer, there's just going to be a little bit of an ice layer that's built up. You're just going to chip that off with your spoon and then just mix it in, and then you should have a nice consistent ice cream flavor. That's the recipe though for this simple anabolic ice cream. If you enjoyed this ice cream and are looking forward to those future anabolic ice cream videos that I mentioned, be sure to subscribe and also turn on post notifications so you know exactly when they're uploaded. And also, just wanted to say I appreciate each and every one of you for watching.